Chapter 1 Nakia's personality and physical appearance were drastically altered due to her experiences that had occurred 1,000,000 years into the future, and it rested on T'Challa to determine if his fiancée was a double agent for the cult that had changed her. He ran his hand along the tense muscles that were on the left side of her spine, and it relaxed the trigger points that were there. "I like that," she said. Her voice had an electricity to it unlike the measured tones that she had before. "The children of Killmonger allowed you to come back to the past even though you destroyed their belief system," said T'Challa. "Yes." T'Challa's hyper-awareness found no deception in her body language or voice, yet he was not satisfied. "Do you doubt my mission report?" asked Nakia. "Any event that involves Kang the Conqueror makes me question things if I was not there to see them for myself," replied T'Challa. "What more does the Oathmaker King require from me?" asked the Bantu-haired woman. "What is that title about?" "The children of Killmonger identified you as the Oathmaker King in their genetic memory rituals. That was not in your report. It must have slipped my mind." T'Challa sensed that she did not lie, but he could not trust his abilities in regards to her because he loved her too much. A giant Vundu catfish surfaced in the circular pool that was next to where T'Challa massaged his lover. Vibranium radiation had made the species as large as dolphins. The catfish looked into T'Challa's face. The Black Panther saw his reflection on the pupils. Then the catfish sank back into the depths of the pool that was connected to tunnels which were developed by Nakia's river clan to link the Esabi River to their homes. Later he went to the underground city that the Miner clan had built thousands of years ago but was abandoned because a Black Panther had outlawed its occupation. The city had since been converted into a training ground for extraordinary mutant telepaths in Wakanda. Unofficially, the city kept erratic telepaths safe from society. T'Challa encountered the telepath who had sewn his mouth shut and was called mute. "I require your help. I want to prevent puppets from becoming future Black Panthers so the country will not be ruled by people hidden in the shadows. I know you love Wakanda, that is why you did not accept Krakoa's invitation to live with other mutants on that island," said T'Challa. "I'm patriotic but not for the reason that you think," said Mute telepathically. "Oh," said T'Challa. "I wanted to rule Wakanda from here. I would have taken over a challenger, have him defeat you and then rule from the shadows. But you already knew that, hence you came to me to help you prevent my plan from becoming a reality," said Mute. "The one flaw to your plan was no one presently can defeat me," said T'Challa. "Yes, but you will not be a young man forever," said Mute. "And you cannot execute me now because Krakoa will find out, since they are always scanning for my kind, plus I have committed no crime as yet. Law and order will be not abused by you for long," said T'Challa. "How so?" "Because I am amending the laws and you just gave me the evidence I needed to make my case to the Council of Clans," said T'Challa, and he revealed a recorder in his hand. "Thank you for your assistance." Chapter 2 The capital of Wakanda was abuzz with news of the impending introduction of a law that would affect the gateway to governance of the country. The inhabitants of the techno-organic metropolis had differing opinions on the situation, with some for the measure and others against it because it infringed on the principle of trust on which the clans granted power to one individual to govern their affairs. T'Challa walked amongst the populace in disguise and listened to the talk of the people at public spaces about the issue. He was concerned that the magnitude of the proposed oath system to protect the people was lost on them. From Nakia's report, Wakanda would become an interstellar community that would constantly be tested for the whereabouts of the hiding place of their spiritual technology designer. Kang the Conqueror tried to get the information and Nakia said that she stopped him with the oath system. The problem T'Challa had was that he did not know what was sacrificed to get the system in place. He left the city and went to the area where Nakia's newfound abilities were observed by military specialists in the field of time travel. Nakia had met the spiritual technology designer and her body was altered after the encounter. Her skin transformed into a red and gold armor that covered the entire body. Two curvy but sharp protrusions came out the golden armor on both sides of her face like whiskers. Psychic chakrams formed in her hands and she was able to throw them at targets that exploded in the aftermath. More importantly, Nakia phased through the time and space barrier at will, and she could speak into and receive messages from all branches of the time streams in the past, present, and future. Remarkable gifts to aid Nakia in her duties as a spy, but a security nightmare for T'Challa because she was so close to him and he assumed that the madman and time traveler Kang the Conqueror had found that out. Next story, The Children of Killmonger Chapter 1. The axe came down on the skull of the Umoyaomubi while a knob carry was rammed into its midsection. The combination knocked the fight out of the aggressor and its controller on the world that was on a collision course with the ringed planet of Wakanda. The Killmonger avatar kicked the Umoyaomubi away from Wakanda with disgust and then smashed the knob carry into the heart of the spherical rogue planet, crushing the mechanical cities on the surface. Then with a side swipe of the axe the Killmonger pushed the rogue planet off course and so ended another skirmish in the Thousand-Year War. T'Chad's consciousness abandoned the Killmonger avatar and he woke up in the Bast sarcophagus. His eyes were watery, the nostrils burned and every nerve in his body throbbed. The pins from the sarcophagus quietly retreated from his skin and he was gently expelled from the machine when the bedding moved forward and sent him through the front of the sarcophagus. The floating royal robe that awaited him quickly covered its master. King T'Chad, all systems are in need of repairs which will take 2 days, said the Bast intelligence. I understand, said T'Chad. The Bast intelligence sent him through the post-battle routine to return his mind and body to a stable human condition. While this was being done, T'Chad thought about how significant the fight was to him personally after the revelation by a time traveler that Killmonger was not the founder of Wakanda. It had been a fabrication of history. 1 million years of a lie was not easily erased in a few days, especially when your identity was built upon it. The cleansing protocols ended and T'Chad was set free from the Pyramid of Bast by teleportation to his government house. In the foyer of the house was a moving sculpture of Wakanda. The planet was a ring that rotated around an equally rotating artificial sun. Slowly and softly the War Tribunal telepathically sent their reports to T'Chad about the rogue planet and sightings of Cosmic Thanos and Cosmic Hulk. The Peace Tribunal relayed messages of refugees that sought a home on Wakanda and diplomatic entreaties from other warrior planets like Wakanda. The Internal Tribunal spoke of development projections, maintenance, and order. Law and order were important to T'Chad because the people's hardcore spiritual belief in Killmonger powered the avatar that protected them. He only saw a worst-case scenario if the truth was ever revealed to the public. How can I fix this? He asked himself after the telepathic briefings were done. Apart from him there were 10 others who knew the truth. Could he trust them to keep the secret? The oath machine was the only option to keep them in line, he surmised, even though all the anxiety stemmed from that device. He corrected himself because it was not the newly discovered oath machine that offended him, rather it was the person who invented it that was really the problem. The resources, relationships, and money that King T'Challa had set aside for Wakanda 1 million years ago were the reasons that planet Wakanda existed. Emperor Killmonger had been T'Challa's foe at one point in time, which might have been the reason that Killmonger's children and their descendants discarded the history of Wakanda prior to their patriarch taking the throne of Wakanda. Thus, the mantle of Killmonger was created and it replaced the mantle of Black Panther. King T'Chad the Killmonger wanted to stop his pondering of the issues, but he could not. Sleep was not his friend even though he wanted it to be. Chapter 2 Present-day Earth Wakanda. A person who went by the alias Watchman had sent a series of riddles to T'Challa and the Black Panther had tracked the source location to an off-the-grid housing unit. A holographic video began to play when T'Challa entered the house. A number of faces were on the screen and they appeared to be screenshots of everyday citizens in the streets and towns across the country. The mouths of the people began to move in unison as a narrator spoke from the hologram. Great is T'Challa and he must prevail. I am the watchman. I will make sure that you will prevail. I don't believe in the challenge day system. It has become flawed because your perceived excellence has deterred new challengers. But I will keep you honest. You must be tested daily so you will not fall into complacency. My threats are real and the stakes are high. Do not let me down. The housing unit was sanitized so T'Challa's hypersenses found nothing to assist him. Upon inspection of the hardware and software for the hologram, he found the materials to be custom-made. He accessed the National Trademark Registry for programmers and computer developers for any patterns that showed the slightest similarity to the hologram setup. The diagrams and metadata flashed across the lenses of the Black Panther ceremonial suit's face mask. T'Challa also asked the system to give him the ghost registry of the trademarks that were deleted. He narrowed down his interests to half a dozen individuals and then he accessed live surveillance feeds of each of the persons, overriding the personal privacy protocols to do so. One person was missing from the feeds and his name was Elo. Computer generate a psychological profile of this person using all his data from his birth to present day, said T'Challa. While the computer did its job, the Black Panther went in search of Elo. The man worked as a heavy-duty trucker for a company. Elo's shift was supposed to be over, but a truck was missing from the company's manifesto even though it was marked as being sent to maintenance. The tracker on the truck was also non-responsive, which was the reason for the maintenance check. T'Challa did a national search for the truck but changed its color schemes, and he asked the satellites to provide him with the information on any moving vehicle in Wakanda that they could not identify with a tracker. The Black Panther knew that the results would take a few minutes because several government agencies were being cross-referenced. He took a moment to ponder on the statement that strength encouraged conflict against it. All he had done was become the best version of himself for the benefit of the nation, and somehow an unbalanced person believed it was an invitation to test himself against T'Challa. The computer told him that the truck was almost onto the bridge to Najadaka City, so the Black Panther pressed the Golden Panther seal on his neck and he was teleported to the coordinates. T'Challa appeared in front of the truck and made eye contact with the driver. The vehicle's speed increased and T'Challa sidestepped it with his enhanced body control. He leapt onto the container at the back of the truck and tore it open with his claws. He smelled explosive compounds. He teleported to the driver's section, but the civilian-dressed Elo had already dived out. T'Challa stopped the truck and got out in time to see Elo dive into the river beneath the bridge. The Black Panther did likewise in pursuit of the man. The Black Panther sensed the movements of Elo in the river, then the man left the water. T'Challa cautiously emerged from the river and he saw Elo in a modified ceremonial suit that clan judges wore. The attire was made for combat. You passed the second test for today, but did you deactivate the bombs? Asked Elo. An explosion from the bridge angered the Black Panther, so in a heartbeat he was at Elo's throat, but the man dematerialized. T'Challa fell through the watchman and turned around with a spear of light to counter the man's defenses. Not good enough, said Watchman. The river seemed to be possessed as a mass of water erupted out of the river and punched the Black Panther. T'Challa used a holographic shield to lessen the blow, but he realized the watchman had disappeared. Black Panther returned to the bridge and luckily no one was killed, even though there were injuries to motorists. Chapter 3 T'Challa stood inside of the vacant Challenge Day arena that was underground. The arena was raised to the surface on a platform on the day of the ritual. To the far right were the 7 rhino-sized talking drums that used drum language to speak about the history of the ritual, the rules, and the backgrounds of the participants. The stands for the public to watch the fights live were around the circular gallery where the combat took place. Usually a participant entered from anywhere on the rim of the gallery, but T'Challa wanted to change that tradition. The oath machine that T'Challa envisioned would be in a fixed position and a person had to pass through it to enter the fight. Watchman was correct in his assessment of the Challenge Day ritual, thought T'Challa, but it was a limitation rather than a fundamental weakness. The true flaw was assessing the genuineness of the participants even if they were the incumbent Black Panthers. 1,000,000 years into the future planet Wakanda, King T'Chad ran his hand along the oath machine. It was made from an ancient metal that no longer existed. Nineth and 10th dimensional poly shapes decorated the grey body. The device was warm and vibrated very slightly. This King T'Challa must have been a very overprotective and paranoid person, said T'Chad. I am sorry to interrupt, my liege, said Kang. T'Chad turned to him. By tradition only a few people could speak to a Killmonger in the flesh because the warrior was always supposed to be in meditation. Kang had maneuvered through the political ranks to reach his position as a safe person. Has the M'Bathuma spoken to you since the time traveler left? Asked Kang. T'Chad glanced to the other side of the oath machine to a round dome that hovered inside of a sealed and transparent ring. The M'Bathuma made the Killmonger avatar and other godlike weapons for the dynasties that came from the original Killmonger. The oath machine was the gateway to the M'Bathuma. It did not speak to me. It spoke to Nakia and then it transformed her, replied T'Chad. Forgive my poor choice of words. There was so much confusion at the time and I was barely conscious when everything happened, said Kang. Why are you really here? Asked T'Chad. I am intrigued by the device as well because of its power to strip a person down to the core of their soul and bare it for others to see, replied Kang. Only a madman would contrive of such a thing, said T'Chad. I concur. How are you taking the revelation about the truth? It means nothing to me. My faith is strong and will continue to be so, replied T'Chad. You can trust me to keep the secret, but what about the others? They may have to be silenced before their appetites for blackmail manifests, said Kang. Curt as usual, said T'Chad. I will take your counsel into consideration. Thank you, my lord, because we never know how low someone will stoop to conquer, said Kang. Next story, Deadpool Chapter 1. Wait, I need your input to ensure the survival of humans 1,000,000 years from now, said T'Challa. His guest, Deadpool, was puzzled. The future must have cool tech to save humans, so why am I needed? She will answer that question, said T'Challa while he pointed to the golden woman at his side. I am Nakia and I have visited humanity 1,000,000 years from now. Generations of massacres on a cosmic scale caused a lot of knowledge to be lost every time that mankind had to rebuild. King T'Challa's oath machine will become a powerful artifact in that period of time. So let's get into a time machine already and go save the future like we normally do, said Deadpool. You will find nothing but the emptiness of space there, with the Earth having been destroyed and humanity living on an artificial planet that travels the stars, said T'Challa. You will not find them in time. Is that a pun? Asked Deadpool. T'Challa rose from his seat in the garden. Hummingbirds darted about the flowers that were behind him. Wait, I want your 10th dimensional abilities, said T'Challa. My what? That is not in my bio. Are you and the writer of this story making up a plot device? No, wait, I am not making it up. Whenever you mention terms like the writer or comic book, we usually ignore it as lunatic babble. But I was doing research for the Oath Machine and I discovered that your family home in Ohio was erected on a 10th dimensional fault line, said T'Challa. Oh my god, you mean to say that I am a chosen one trope, said Deadpool. Yes, because even if you weren't in the Weapon X military program to acquire the regeneration factor and enhancements, the 10th dimensional ability would have still made you a member of the meta-human community, said T'Challa. I am a mutant, not a meta-human, said Deadpool. That is up for debate, but if you let me examine your fourth wall breaking ability, I will determine what side of the superhuman spectrum that you fall under, said T'Challa. Deal, said Deadpool. So when you verify that I am a mutant, those idiots on Krakow will have to take me in because I will have the Black Panther seal of approval. Chapter 2 1 million years into the future. Old Man Deadpool's dim eyes looked up at the Niven sphere that turned the heat of the artificial sun to the soft glow of a moon by running along the skyline of the ring-shaped planet Wakanda. The artificial night had replaced the artificial day, but Deadpool's work continued. His new recruits in the Avengers trained diligently under his guidance. They, like their predecessors, were to lose their lives in order for humanity to escape Cosmic Thanos and Cosmic Hulk. Deadpool walked down a pathway from Fort Avengers by himself. He hoped that Phoenix Wolverine might eventually reconnect with him telepathically, but several months had passed since they last spoke on the eve of Wolverine and Cosmic Hulk's battle. Deadpool shuddered at the thought that his friend had perished much like Thor at the hands of Cosmic Thanos. A green sea was at the end of the pathway. Various aliens lived in the waters. They were survivors of worlds destroyed by the two great predators that roamed space. At least Galactus had a role to play when he drained worlds, but Hulk and Thanos serve no purpose, muttered Deadpool. The waves crashed into someone on his far right. It was the politician called Kang, who was a 7.5 feet tall giant and had a conqueror's demeanor. Deadpool felt like in his younger years he had known Kang, but that would make Kang over 1 million years old. Only Deadpool was that old due to his regeneration factor. The discerning spirit in Deadpool told him that Kang was untrustworthy. "Good evening, Headmaster. How goes the Avengers Academy?" asked Kang. "They should get the job done of escorting escape pods off the planet while the Killmonger Avatar battles the cosmic beasts," replied Deadpool. "Do you believe in reincarnation, Deadpool?" asked Kang. The discerning spirit in Deadpool rang off alarm bells, yet he ignored them. "I remember a time when you were called the Merc with a mouth. Now here you are, a decrepit, lost for words dreamer," said Kang. "King T'Chad does not know what you are, but I will tell him." "How? Can you get beyond the Durham mileage gates or the Bast intelligence computer?" Deadpool was able to glimpse an image in his past when he was a part of the golden age of Avengers on Earth, and he saw them fighting Kang the Conqueror. A sharp and brief burst of light tore apart Deadpool. Moments later in Avengers Academy, several bursts of the same light annihilated its members. Afterwards, Kang looked into the night sky. He observed two distinct objects in deep space like comets. One object was the Cosmic Hulk and the next was the Cosmic Thanos, and both were on a collision course with planet Wakanda. Chapter 3 Present Day. "The results are inconclusive on your status as a mutant," said T'Challa. "You promised to certify me as a mutant," said Deadpool. "Wait, that is not true," said T'Challa. "You are everything people say you are. Manipulative," said Deadpool. "Just because you have a nation and a special medal you think you can get away with anything. Well, I have a nation too, called Staten Island, and I have investments in copper mines. Wade, you used a loophole in the militia ordinance to deputize yourself and the Deadpool Corps as law and order providers during a time of crisis in New York. Furthermore, your copper investment portfolio is managed by Landau, Luckman and Lake, which is an interdimensional wealth consortium that Wakanda owns." "What? Wait a dang minute there, Padre. You can't own Landau, Luckman and Lake. Wolverine's money is in there, Jean Grey's money is in there, Wade, Dr. Octavius, and Kang the Conqueror's assets are also in there. All your money has been pooled together with the blood money of Merchants of Death, a Deadpool," said T'Challa. "And you own it. Wakanda recently acquired some major assets and the business was a part of the acquisition," replied T'Challa. "You would be an awesome villain for me to have. We could have intellectual conversations and trade pseudo babble before the fist fights," said Deadpool. Nevertheless, Wade, you will be compensated for your time here and I want to hire you for a job, said T'Challa. Next story, Law and Order Chapter 1. T'Challa kicked in the door of the Time Variance Authority Shadow Headquarters. The steel door flew off its hinges and tumbled through the peacekeepers that were behind it. The door clanked along the metal floor until it ran into a pillar and buried itself deep within it. T'Challa detonated a mini-gene bomb that sent the 1,000 peacekeepers into paralysis. He then took 2 retroactive cannons from 2 of the peacekeepers and he fired the weapons at the bunker that was in front of him. The cannons ripped matter apart by sending it back into time until it ceased to exist. The bunker vanished and all that remained was a lanky being with 3 faces lined up vertically in the chest. The strange being opened its 3-fingered hand and a peacekeeper appeared. This one was bigger than the others and he carried a sword with a whip-like blade that ran from the hilt to the ground, and the peacekeeper dissected T'Challa's cannons with a flick of the sword. The elastic blade looked silvery in T'Challa's eyes when it moved. The Black Panther countered by showing he was just as fast as the peacekeeper's blade by running up to the foe and crushing his throat with a sharp finger's strike. The Black Panther leapt onto the dead creature's shoulder and kicked the lanky creator, the Time Variance Authority. The being fell on its back and looked up in awe that the Black Panther was able to hit it with such force. Tell the rebel presidents of Landa, Luckman, and Lake that there shall be law and order even if they don't like how I acquired the company. I will suffer no disobedience. As for you, the message is simple. The Wakandan that you created as a distraction for me called Watcher is not up to the task. He requires more training. Lastly, Kang the Conqueror and you have allied to ensure that when my universe dies the Kang Time Stream Empire will take over the new reincarnated universe. That business arrangement shall end today, said T'Challa. You will have to kill me first, said the being. Yet you can't. But I can cripple you, said T'Challa. The sound of an explosion swept through the doorway and into the headquarters. That was the Cross-Time Central Rail Express not leaving the departure gate. There are more ways for me to disrupt your life in the null time void, so you can heed my words or suffer the consequences, said T'Challa. Alioth is waiting. The name Aloith drained the defiant expressions out of the 3 faces. T'Challa saw the great concern in the eyes. Are we on the same page? Asked T'Challa. Yes, replied the creature. Chapter 2. The gold and ebony-skinned Nakia threw her chakrams to disperse the crowd of peacekeepers at the Time Variance Authority departure gate. The mauled train behind her was a result of her handiwork. The chakrams exploded in the midst of the peacekeepers. Reinforcements congregated in the balcony on the opposite side of the train hub and they opened fire with their retroactive cannons. Nakia dived into the train to avoid being hit, but the disintegration process happened faster than she anticipated as the train began to vanish due to the barrage of cannon fire. There were the sounds of grinding and tearing of metal. The thick smoke from her strike on the train stung her eyes as she navigated through the mangled seats. She slipped through an opening and emerged right under the balcony. She fired her chakrams into the underside of the structure, then acrobatically dodged the debris from the explosions. There was a brief lull in the departure area and Nakia heard the 1 million backup peacekeepers on their way to her because of the eerie noise of their boots hitting the floor in unison. She ran as fast as possible to the Wakandan spirit pincher vessel that was hidden. Her escape route took her through the giant sculptures of faceless humanoids and along winding bends of over-elaborate masonry work. Eventually she jumped from a corridor and onto the spirit pincher ship that was disguised as one of the orange sculptures that decorated the lower levels of the fortress. She glanced at the warm whiteness that surrounded the fortress in the null time void. Then she entered the cockpit and T'Challa was waiting for her. He turned on the ignition and the ship sliced through the spiritual barrier that separated Time Variance Authority from the time streams. Chapter 3. Once they were back in Wakanda, T'Challa asked Nakia to speak with King T'Chad, who lived 1 million years into the future. Tell T'Chad that there is a plot to speed up the end of the universe through the elimination of him and planet Wakanda, said T'Challa. Sit with me, said Nakia. T'Challa followed her instructions, which resulted in his FNAS seated in his lap, their fingers intertwined and their breathing in unison. Although Nakia's Bantu hairstyle was gold, it still felt soft under his chin, just like the rest her body. He could feel the energy that she tapped into that made her hyper-aware of the time streams. He thought about how the rogue Landa, Luckman, and Lake presidents tossed her into a time well in the hope it would have killed her. Baby, whatever it is that you are thinking of, stop it because it's disrupting the connection, said Nakia. Yes, darling, said T'Challa. After a short silence, Nakia said, I am with King T'Chad. Tell him Kang is in a conspiracy against humanity, said T'Challa. Elsewhere, the rogue presidents of Landa, Luckman, and Lake evaluated the risk and reward ratio now that the Black Panther had discovered their business arrangement with the Warring Time Variance Authority and the Kang Empire. I believe that Kang will deliver on his promise. He will find a means to get past the protection that is around planet Wakanda's Forge Master and kill him. Immortus Kang has delayed this simple project to the point it looks like we are taking on major overruns. All life should have been eradicated from that universe by now and the monolith installed. The two presidents looked at the ratio again. We can make a deal with Alioth to reduce T'Challa's impact. Yes, that can work. The two-headed creature left the desk and entered a time well to meet with Alioth. The fact that T'Challa believed that they were minor players in the grand scheme would work to their advantage. Next story, Landa, Luckman, and Lake Chapter 1. The puffs of the tobacco smoke drifted up and suddenly became suspended in front of the smoker's face. The smoker was equally frozen because time had stopped. From the smoker's window view, he saw that the Niven field had turned from translucent to opaque in the sky. That was the signal for the evacuation of planet Wakanda. The smoker had come to the planet because it had law and order, unlike the other artificial planets that were actually gigantic lifeboats for a cosmos ravaged by plant destruction. Originally, planet Wakanda was only for humans who followed the warrior tenets of the antiquity leader called Emperor Killmonger. The Wakandans gave 10 million acres of land to every sentient species that came to the planet, but it was not blind hospitality, as the Wakandans dealt heavily with any usurpers and interspecies wars. An implant glowed in the smoker's hand, which indicated that he was about to be teleported to a cadastral ship. He would meet his kin there and a suitable bioatmosphere for his species. The evacuation trials had prepared everyone to expect the ships to launch 10 seconds after teleportation. The 10 seconds came and went, but the ship was still docked. A minute went by without any updates from the authorities. The ship shook violently and the smoker panicked. Meanwhile, T'Challa the Black Panther thanked Deadpool and his corps for the capture of Kang the Conqueror's first time machine, the Sphinx. T'Challa was not interested in the time machine, he just wanted Kang to know that it was in his possession. T'Challa's companion Nakia spoke into the time stream with her abilities, and she made contact with Kang on behalf of T'Challa. Tell him that I will take from him what he most desires if he lets planet Wakanda die, said T'Challa. 1 million years into the future, Kang destroyed the copies of the vast artificial intelligence that were on all the cadastral ships because they controlled the launches. And then he waited for the end of mankind and the remnants of multitudes of galactic species. He had given up on killing the Forge Master because he could not get beyond the oath machine that protected the being. He hoped that either the one below all, aka Cosmic Hulk, or Cosmic Thanos would take care of killing the Forge Master. A warning light in his iris told him that the Sphinx was tampered with in its hiding place. Then he received T'Challa's message, and it made him grin that the Black Panther thought they were equals. Kang considered himself a gentleman's dictator. His refined nature made him build the Sphinx even though time travel was illegal in the utopian human age that he was born in, because he saw the ban as a denial of the right of enjoyment. The people he enslaved in his empires in the time streams were put under his control because he was their savior. However, Kang looked to new beginnings with the collapse of the current universe, with him surviving in the monolith craft. Not even T'Challa's late impediment could change that fact. Kang activated the security protocols in the Sphinx. Chapter 2. T'Challa removed the droids that were hidden in the Sphinx. They were machines that could fit inside a man's hand and grow to the height of a skyscraper in less than a minute. During T'Challa's search, he discovered that the components of the time-traveling device were supplied by a Landau, Luckman, and Lake affiliate. T'Challa sighed because he had not known that Kang and LLL were that close. Personally, T'Challa was still figuring out who created LLL and why it became the largest interdimensional private equity firm. Recently, Wakanda acquired ownership of LLL due to a strange requirement that the firm could only operate in T'Challa's universe once a native was at the helm. Nakia came next to T'Challa. "A signal tried to reach the Sphinx from planet Wakanda and I blocked it," said Nakia. "Thanks. Do you think we did enough?" asked Nakia. "It comes down to King T'Chad. We have given him the tools, so he has to follow through for us," replied T'Challa. Next story, Battle of the Two Kings. Chapter 1. The landscape resembled the Kalahari Desert, and the foundations of a once grand city protruded from the sands. T'Challa watched the ruins and he remembered the time he spent in Kang the Conqueror's pocket dimension city before the great Alioth came like a sandstorm and demolished it. The rogue Wakandan who called himself Watcher came into T'Challa's view, and the Black Panther left the shade of the Sphinx to meet the warrior. "You said that I required further training, so here I am, because iron sharpens iron," said the Watcher. "I am not flattered," said T'Challa. "Are you ashamed that I think so highly of you? After all, you will be considered the greatest Black Panther to have ever lived and will be remembered for all time." "No, I will be forgotten like the city that was once here," said T'Challa. "Your benefactors already knew that." The Watcher frowned behind the ceremonial mask that he wore. "How are you aware of this?" asked Watcher. "Because I just had a conversation with the king of a Wakanda that's 1 million years into the future," replied T'Challa. "Presently I have to punish you for endangering the citizens of our nation because you forgot that I am not only its protector but its law and order, which is an oath I intend to keep." "Punish? That will be harder than you think. Let me introduce you to my credentials," said Watcher, and then he shot into the sky like a rocket. T'Challa made a dash away from the Sphinx because his companion Nakia was inside of it and he didn't want her to be collateral damage. What happened next was like a small neutron bomb was dropped from the sky and it tore open the ground. T'Challa's superhuman run had taken him slightly out of the blast zone. "I was on the front lines of wars that you never heard of. I clashed with frost giants, led guerrillas, and governed wards," shouted Watcher. T'Challa didn't doubt the boasts, since the events could have occurred in accelerated time pocket dimensions created by the Time Variance Authority that Watcher worked for. Watcher came back down and he floated above the Black Panther. "What did you gain as a person from those experiences?" "Nothing. Your self-worth comes through fighting me. How can I take someone like that seriously? Black Panther is Wakanda and Wakanda is Black Panther, so when I sharpen you through combat I am directly making our nation stronger. I am a patriot when all is said and done," said Watcher. T'Challa hated when madmen placed beautiful or respectable labels on their heinous acts, so Watcher's statement sent the Black Panther into attack mode. T'Challa threw energy daggers at Watcher, then he ran at maximum speed until he leaped above both the daggers and Watcher. The Black Panther saw the Watcher dodge the projectiles by moving to the side. T'Challa drew his claws and shredded Watcher's mask while the man was still moving sideways. T'Challa did not get the purchase on the mask that he wanted, so Watcher was able to slip his head away. But the Black Panther contorted his body in such a manner that his knee struck the base of Watcher's neck, which sent the man hard into the sand. T'Challa generated a spear of light in his hands when he returned to the ground. He lunged at Watcher with the spear, but the man caught the tip of the spear to prevent it from wounding him. T'Challa spun 360 degrees and slipped a leg behind Watcher's calf, which unbalanced him. T'Challa used his strength to trip the opponent, and then he tried to end the fight with one more move, but Watcher generated a sword of light that cut through the spear and slashed inches from T'Challa's throat. "Behold the Skybreaker sword," said Watcher. T'Challa assumed the weapon was the cause of the neutron explosion because he sensed a raging energy trapped inside the hilt of the sword. T'Challa teleported into the sky and turned on the hoverboard mode in his boots. He generated 5 spears and threw them down at Watcher. The Skybreaker cut the first spear, but instead of shattering the spear, it exploded into a blinding light. The 4 other spears landed on Watcher and they detonated like dynamite. The Skybreaker released several random neutron shots to keep T'Challa at a distance from its wielder. Sounds that resembled thunder occurred around T'Challa and created turbulence. T'Challa turned off the hoverboard mode and dived. He avoided the shots from the sword and he evaded the wayward thrusts of the blade. T'Challa punched Watcher and it knocked the ceremonial mask off the warrior's face. T'Challa slipped a tiny tracker on the opponent just before he retreated from the Black Panther via teleportation. T'Challa stood and looked around him until he was satisfied that the man had truly left the battlefield. Nakia hailed him from on top of the Sphinx. "I have news from King T'Chad," shouted Nakia. Chapter 2 1 million years into the future. King T'Chad was smitten by Nakia when he first saw her, and that was the only reason he allowed her to speak on behalf of T'Challa, a man he thought little of in terms of character. Shortly after the meeting, T'Chad did the unthinkable. Even though his planet was in immediate peril, he did not become the controller of the Killmonger avatar because T'Challa asked him to hunt down the saboteur called Kang instead. The Bast computer pleaded for him to reconsider. "I have to do this so that the people will have a future tomorrow," said T'Chad. "Cosmic Thanos and Cosmic Hulk will be here in 5 minutes to kill us all," said Bast. "Which was Kang's doing," said T'Chad. "How do you know that?" "The anomaly that Kang investigated in his spaceship outside the planet's ring was a beacon to catch those cosmic ghouls' attention. He cut us and left us to bleed so that the predators could get the scent. He didn't expect Nakia to come tumbling through the anomaly from her home, which was 1 million years in the past. Then why did he bring her planet side?" "He was curious," replied T'Chad. "He left the Forge Master's chamber and teleported to the Monolith Mountain range where Counselor Kang resided. Planet Wakanda will be destroyed in 3 minutes and the evacuation ships have stalled along with the Killmonger planetary defense," said Bast. "King, you are not acting rationally. The reason that planet Wakanda was built like a ribbon around a man-made sun was to allow it to travel with the sun providing propulsion. Currently the planet was moving at maximum speed just short of hyperspace. It could not travel faster due to the weight of the planet on the sun's invisible gravitational webs that kept the ring in alignment. The Forge Master built the planet using the knowledge passed down to it, but that expertise was limited due to periods of catastrophic changes in the cosmos where libraries of engineering know-how were lost and had to be rebuilt. King T'Challa had advised King T'Chad on a way for the planet to jump through time by using the sun as a catapult. T'Chad gave the instructions to the Forge Master and he hoped for the best. He did not tell Bast these things because for the evacuation ships to have stalled meant that Kang had hacked Bast's source code. The machine was untrustworthy. T'Chad realized that T'Challa's total distrust for the world made him build the Oath machine that tested if a governmental candidate was truly for the people. If the past generation of planet Wakanda had known of the machine's true power, then they would have used it and Kang would not have slithered his way into a senior position on the council. Sadly, the machine was missioned as a ceremonial guard around the orb that held the Forge Master. "We are equally to blame for the predicament that we find ourselves in today," T'Chad said under his breath. He met Kang asleep in a stasis field that was in the belly of an elaborate ship, and T'Chad was glad. The Oath King T'Challa had surmised that Kang wanted this universe to die prematurely so that he could survive and return in the next reincarnation of the universe. T'Chad spread his arms and concentrated on the Killmonger avatar because T'Challa had advised that the Forge Master should make the planetary defense system remotely accessible to T'Chad. 1 minute until the enemies make contact with us, shouted Bast. T'Chad concentrated until he was consciously in space. He saw the revolving ring of the planet and felt the sun in his chest. In one hand he held the Knobkerry battle club, and in the next hand were the Monolith Mountains. He glanced over his shoulders and saw the green eyes of the face that was larger than his own. He felt hands reaching for him. On his left flank was another dreary presence, and he looked across and saw a crown resting on a purple head that was barreling towards him. The two demons grabbed him, and he no longer felt the sun in his chest but a sudden chill, and then he felt nothing else as everything went black. Present day. T'Challa met Nakia on the Sphinx. She was concerned about him because of the torn-up ceremonial Black Panther suit. "It's nothing," said T'Challa. "Well, T'Chad has woken up. It seems that the planet was flung into the 9th incarnation of the universe, but they are still exploring to make sure. They have no sun, but they are rebuilding one, so in the meantime they are adrift," said Nakia. "At least they are alive," said T'Challa, and he embraced her. "It gets better because he thinks he left Kang with Cosmic Hulk and Thanos," said Nakia. Elsewhere. The renegade presidents of Landa, Luckman, and Lake parleyed with Alioth the Time Lord. "What could the lowly human T'Challa have possibly given you in exchange for your assistance?" asked the presidents. The swirling sands of time looked down on the multiverse speck ices called multipoles because of the two separate brains that inhabited the same body. T'Challa the Black Panther gave his oath that humans and other flesh-bound creatures will be around at the end of eternity so that my sister Time would have a reason to continue on, replied Alioth. "Did you really expect him to keep such a magnanimous oath?" asked the presidents. Alioth looked into the broken and mangled time steams to the very end where time met uncertainty and saw the tiny battered round ribbon of planet Wakanda adrift in a newborn universe. "He did," replied Alioth.